Welcome everybody to our latest video in this series on learning SQL. Today's topic is about the update statement. The update statement is used to modify existing data. So after you've got data into your tables, sometimes you want to modify the data, maybe change names like spelling or something like that. Change values. That's where you use the update statement. So it's used to change existing data. All right, let's get started, shall we? Here's my setup. I'm using MySQL. The reason being it's free, so if you want to try this, you can download it and start working on SQL. I'm using MySQL version 8.0.16. And if you've been following along, I'm using this one because it's the latest version as of this video. It supports the check constraint. So if you followed along in my first video, you'll see why I use this one. Okay. So down here in the bottom panel here, this is MySQL. It's called the command line or console window. Up here in the left upper panel here, I have the tables that I'm using in my database. Okay, there's 4 tables. And in the right panel here, I'm using Notepad. Notepad is where I type in all my SQL commands, and then I load them externally from the console window. It's a lot easier to use a notepad, like a text editor of some kind, to create your SQL commands rather than doing it directly at the command line. It's easy for you to see what you're typing, formatting it properly so you can read it easily, and so if you got an error, it's easy to make a change to it. I don't use the GUI. I like to use the command lines, but you can use whatever you want. And as always, some of the commands are MySQL specific, but I will point those out and then tell you what you can use usually in another system. Okay, all the concepts you learn here are good for all relational databases. It doesn't matter if you're using Oracle or SQL Server or whatever. It all works the same, just the syntax changes slightly. Okay, so I'm going to go to MySQL, and as always, I'm going to just type show databases. This is a MySQL specific command that shows what databases I have on my server. This is the one we're using, grades. So I want to set that as my default and spell it right. Gee, I'm bad today. Use grades sets that database as the default so that all my commands will be executed against that database. So let's just start here and type in select star from student. Don't worry about what this command does. I just want to see what's in my table called student. Okay, so I have 3 rows or 3 records here. Okay, so let's assume this Bob Smith right here, the first one, we spelt improperly. Instead of S-M-I-T-H, let's assume the last name should be S-M-Y-T-H. So we want to change that spelling of that last name. So the command, I'm going up to Notepad now. The command is update. So update is the command we use to change existing data. Now notice I'm typing in an uppercase. SQL is not case sensitive. I type all SQL commands or keywords in uppercase just to point them out to you guys, but you can write them all in lowercase if you want. Okay, I'm going to type things on multiple lines just to make it neat, but you don't have to. Everything can be typed on one line. Any indenting you use or anything like that is ignored by SQL also, so it's just for readability. Okay, so update. So what do you want to update? Which table do you want to update? So you type in update, then the name of the table. So update student. So we're going to update the student table. Now what are we going to do? We're going to set. You always use that word, set. What are we going to set? We're going to set the student last name. Student last name. And we want to change it. So we want it to equal now Smith, like this. That's spelling. And since this column is a data type of character, The literal that you type in has to be enclosed in quotation marks. Use single quotation marks like that, okay? Don't use double quotes for literals. Only use double quotes for object names. Now, if I was to put a semicolon here, remember a semicolon denotes the end of a statement. That's the delimiter. That SQL needs some kind of delimiter. The default delimiter is always the semicolon. Okay, that says the statement is done. If I was to execute that now, perfectly valid. It would work, no problem. The problem with this is I'm saying update the table student and set the student last name to Smith. That's it. It doesn't know which row I'm talking about. So what's it going to do? It's going to change everybody's student last name to Smith. Everyone. If I had 100,000 records in here or 1 billion records in here, it's going to change everybody's last name to Smith. That's probably not what you want to do. So when you use the update statement, you should use another clause in your statement, and it's called the where clause. A where clause is like a filter, okay? It's filtering out the result set or result, okay? So what we want to do is find something in this row, any of these columns or combination of columns, that uniquely identifies this person. I could use the student ID column because that's my primary key, but in programming, when you're programming, a lot of times you don't know the actual value of the primary key, unless you're using a business data for your primary key, which I don't recommend. But so what we got to do is find something that will identify this column, or sorry, this row, okay? And student number is unique between all students, so I can use the student number. So I can say where the student number is equal to, and it is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then put it in. I'm gonna expand this so we can read it all, the whole statement. So update student, set student last name equal to Smith. That would set everybody's last name to Smith. So what I want to do is identify exactly which row. So I say where the student number is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's only one student with that student number. So therefore, now if I run it, it says, okay, this is the one I want to change. So let's do that. Let's save that. Go into MySQL, type in the word source. Source, as you know from previous videos, is the command in MySQL that loads or executes external script files. The path where I have my script file and the name of the script file. Okay, so now if I hit enter, it says okay. Let's see what happened. So select star from student again, and again, if you've been watching my videos, you know I'm not typing this fast. I'm using the up and down arrow keys to go through the keyboard buffer. So that'll just go through all my last commands. So select star from student, and remember we're watching this row right here. This student last name is Smith. Should have been changed to Smith that way, that spelling. Okay, so very, very important to remember when you're using an update statement, use a where clause with it to identify exactly what you want to change, which row or rows, it could be multiple rows, you can want to change, okay? So be very, very careful with that. If you don't have the where clause, the update statement will be executed against every row in your table, and that's usually not what you want. It does happen sometimes, like if you have an invoicing program and you have products and pricing, and let's say you want to do pricing, a price increase, you can, and you have a column for selling price. You can update by, say, all prices go up by 10%. You can multiply that column by 1.1, and that will increase everything by 10%. So it does happen, but be very careful. So you think about, make sure you use the where clause where appropriate. If you don't, it gets executed against all rows, okay? Now, let's assume we want to change Bob Smith here. No, let's go back to the first guy. Let's say I want to change two columns. I want to change the first name to Robert, and I want to change the last name back to Smith, the original spelling, S-M-I-T-H. There's two things I could do. I could do two update statements. I could update the student last name, change it to Smith, then run another update and change it to the first name to Bob. Okay, but the update statement actually lets us to change as many of the columns as we want all in one statement. Okay, so I'm going to put this on another line just so we can see it, and I'll put the where clause on another line. So update student, remember, putting them on multiple lines is just for readability. SQL is going to ignore the multiple lines, okay? It's just so we can read it. So update, and then the name of the table, set. What do we want to do? So what we want to do is this. We want to set the first name equal to Robert. And then we want to set the last name to back to Smith. Student L name equal to Smith, like that. So you just put commas in between the columns, okay? You don't need spaces or anything. Just put a comma in between all the columns you want to change. You can do another column if you want. You can now change the student gender if you want it to equal to male, like that, if you want it, okay? And if you knew the date of birth, you could put that in, okay? So you can do as many of the columns as you want. Again, the where clause stays in there because that's the one I want to change. If I left out the where clause, every single person would get their first name changed to Robert, their last name changed to Smith, and their gender changed to M. So make sure you have the proper where clause. So save that. Let's execute it. Source, etemp, run. Let's see the result. And there it is. Robert Smith, now male, is in that column. So we changed 3 columns with 1 update statement. Okay? Oh, sorry. Okay. Now let's show how we delete data. So let's go into the grade table. Let's look at that. So I'm in MySQL here. Select star from grade. And we have 2 rows. Let's get rid of this second one where it says letter grade is F. Okay? Now, we'll get rid of that statement here. Now, yeah, let's do it. So delete is the command. Sorry, it's actually delete from is the full command. So delete from which table? Grade. Okay. And if I did that, just that, it would delete all my records. So be very careful. Okay. Don't type that in and hit enter. Okay. So with the delete statement, always have a where clause. What do you want to delete? Delete from grade where. And again, we want something that identifies the exact row we want to delete. If you said delete from grade where final grade letter equals F, for this set of data, that would be fine. But picture I have millions of rows. There might be lots of people with the letter F, and if I delete it, said that where final grade letter equals F, everyone gets deleted. I want just this. Everyone who has an F gets deleted. I just want this row. So I need something that identifies it. So I'm going with this small set of data or columns. I'm going to have to use the primary key. Okay, and the primary key consists of all these 3 columns: student ID, course ID, and semester ID. So that's what's going to uniquely identify this row. Okay, so I need all 3. So where student ID equals 2 and the course ID equals 1 and the semester ID equals 3. Okay, that will uniquely identify that row, semicolon. Okay, so ands mean all three conditions have to be true. The student ID has to be 2, and the course ID has to be 1, and the semester ID has to be 3. You can't use an or like this. You can't use ors because that says any one of those conditions has to be true only. Okay, so you see this course ID equals to 1. That's in both, so both records would get deleted, and that's not what we want. If you have trouble between ands and ors, just think of this. Like you say, I want to see people who are either 5 feet or 6 feet tall. So the people who are 5 feet would step forward, and the people who are 6 feet step forward. If you actually said, show me people who are 5 feet and 6 feet, grammatically you might say that, you might say that, but grammatically that's incorrect. That's saying a person is 5 feet and 6 feet. A person can't be 5 feet and 6 feet simultaneously. You can't be that. It's 5 feet or 6 feet is what you meant to say. And now I know grammatically you might say and 6 feet. You know what you meant, but grammatically you're saying it wrong. So a person can't be both at the same time. So here we want all 3 of these to be at the same time. So we want the student ID to be 2, and the course ID to be 1, and the semester ID to be 3. Okay, so there you go. So that's would only happen on one row because that's the primary key. So let's go back to MySQL and run that. And then let's see it. Select star from grade. It's gone. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Okay. That video was short and sweet. Big thing to remember with the update and delete. Always use the where clause, or think about using it. I'm not saying you always have to. There are slight conditions where you don't, but usually you do. So make sure you use the where clause that identifies the exact row or rows that you want to delete or update. Okay, that's it. Thanks, guys. If you like the video, please click on like. I'd appreciate that, and subscribing to the channel would be appreciated. And if you want to be notified of new videos, click on the bell icon. Thanks, guys, and have a great day.